industry. Best known for my work on Injustice and Game of Thrones, along with myriad other projects I've worked on over the years. Right now, I am doing my own project on Indiegogo called Lone Star Soul of the Soldier and Monster Hunt. Go ahead and check that out. The link is in the description. Just, I think, underneath my son's link of Masters of Mayhem. Masters of Mayhem. That's his. That's my son's game. At any rate, I am here with you today. Let me open up my channel so I can do this as a legitimate workshop and take questions, comments, more questions. If you've got questions about the art of inking with a nib, then I am here. I am here to help you. Pop out chat, and I do apologize in advance for the sort of shaky nature of the camera. The camera is on a gooseneck attached to my table, and my table is not 100% secure, so a little wiggly, a little jiggly, but hopefully you will be able to see what I'm doing. I will be inking today with a zebra pen, zebra nibs, which you can see here. I actually got these from Japan. These are tempered steel nibs. The same company produces an untempered nib that is much closer to the Hunt 102 Quill nib, but I am desperately low on these, and so I'm going to be using the zebra nibs. They do have the zebras. These are a little bit tougher, a little less flexibility, but they do give you a hairline line. So that is what I'll be using today. You can also go to your local Michaels and get Hunt 102. A problem with the 102s is the quality control is not what it used to be. Where can you get those nibs? Jiminy Cricket asks. Japan? I got mine in Japan when I was there in December. I believe you can get them on Amazon. They're going to be, a little pricier because you have to import them. But if you know somebody in Japan, hey, tell them to go buy you some. And I got mine at the I can't remember the name of the school, but it's an art school, and they have one of the best stationery stores in Japan. So yeah, important thing to have, paper towel, because you're going to want to be cleaning your nib constantly. What kind of ink does one use when inking with a nib? You want an ink that's got good flow, so it cannot be too thick or too dense. The flow it'll just dry. It will not come off of your nib as you want it to. But you don't want it to be too thin, because then your lines come out light. Although inking with a nib, that's usually not as much of a problem as inking with a quill. So what I do is I dip my pen a little bit. Well, maybe I am a little too far away. Hold on a second. Right, I may have to get a little closer. Dip your pen. I hope the volume doesn't go down too low there. I dip the pen, kind of drag it on the back, sometimes just to get a little bit of that wetness on the table, because if your tip has dried out and you can't get a line, if you do this or do something to get a little bit of wetness on the paper itself, it's just sort of a starter to get that line going. So with the quill, you really barely have to touch the paper if you want to get a fine line, right? So here I'm getting fine lines. This quill is actually a few pages old, so I could get a finer line if I stuck a new zebra nib in here, but I think this is good for now. And then the variations on the quill, if you push down a little bit, you can get a thicker line as such. Keep in mind and be very careful, because with nibs, unlike with brushes, when you lay down a line, if it's a thick line, that's going to take time to dry, right? This is going to be wet for, I don't know. And then again, keep your nib clean. That's going to be wet for a minute. So I'll answer some questions while waiting for that Albino says, did you just say you're working at the Piggly Wiggly? What happened to Applebee's? Alright, for those who are not aware, there are some memes that people like to have fun with. Not really the time during a workshop, Albino, but thank you for playing along. P-Money says, do not give my wife an excuse to go to Michael's. She's already spent hours there with me carrying her purse. Sorry, P-Money, but you gotta go to Michael's. You gotta go to Michael's. What do you want me to say? Michael's not my favorite art store, but hey, they do have great coupons. So anytime you walk into a Michael's, make sure you open up the Michael's app on your phone and grab the whatever the coupon of the day is. Sometimes they're as much as 50% off. So you can go in there and grab a nice expensive item and get half off. All right, moving along. I'm afraid I might need to angle this camera because I feel like I'm too far away where I'm working. Hold on a second. Is that better? That might be better. I hope it maintains focus. Serena Sketches says, just back Monster Hunt. Thank you. Yes, I am actually working on Monster Hunt. If you can see right here. Monster Hunt, page 5. Page 5. So, yeah, go ahead and if you wanna pick up the comic that you're watching me work on, then please do. Please do. Satoshi Nakamoto, Bitcoin founder, says, great tip to save money. And saving Bitcoin is what it's all about, right, Satoshi? Save yo Bitcoin. All right, here's a fun trick. For me, if you want it, I'm going to do this now. I keep dipping my pen and then talking, so I have to keep it clean. You want to do straight lines with a ruler and a nib. This is the trick, because here's the problem. If you grab your plastic ruler and somehow or another, somewhere down this line, somebody bumped the ruler or accidentally dropped an X-Acto or something, any imperfection along this line will snag your quill. You snag that quill, you didn't just screw up your lines. Sometimes you could create a big old splatter on your page. So, in order to alleviate that problem, go find yourself, again, this is another Japanese ruler. Sorry, Japanese make all the best tools. This is a cutting edge ruler. This is supposed to be designed so that you can use an X-Acto knife on the edge. It has a stainless steel ridge along the side here. You hear that? Smooth. I can run steel on steel, no snags, nothing. I've never had a problem here. Plus it's raised, so you could even, if you were daring, put that right on the paper and draw the line against it. However, problem with doing that, oftentimes if you're trying to do a line and you've got too much ink on your nib, you hit that thing and this becomes sort of a vacuum underneath. You hit this and a drop of your ink gets underneath here, it becomes blah. It just like sucks up into that space. Right? Here, I'll show you. So, if you're inking here and say your drop gets like here. Boom, look at that. See that? That sort of thing can happen, and it's happened to me on more than one occasion, so I just warn you about it now. Try to avoid that. That's why I wrapped a rubber band around the end of my ruler so that I can hold one end up, the other end won't move around. It's stuck to the table or wherever I put it, and then I can just hold the end up and I can rule along those lines. And that's what I'm going to do right here with his hot dog on a stick. So just going to line it up here, eyeball it, and sort of oh, see, my nib's not starting, so I need to do the flip, I need to do the drip, and there it is. There we go. Need to do the same thing over here with the gun. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm trying to keep in line with my basic view here. And sometimes, like, you see what I'm doing, I'm trying to like get the quill to start. I have to kind of rub it on the paper a couple times. You know, it's art, it's not science, so keep that in mind. Alright. So this is how one uses a quill instead of a technical pen or a marker to do. You could do this with straight lines, you can do this with French curves. And yeah, it works out nicely. I like, because you can still with this, if you want, I'm not doing it here because this is supposed to be mechanical, so I want to keep it very, very stiff and straight and inorganic. But if you're trying to do a texture with this, you can draw a line, and just by adding pressure, you know, you can do like cool, funky textures like this. Oops, need more ink. Right? Stuff like that, and then keep it in line with your ruler. So, hope that is worth it. Oh, wait, still doing the side. See, now this is wet, but I'm daring. So, alright, I think, is that all the straight lines I need to do? Pretty much. Pretty. And then I can also just kind of do my lines in here, moving my ruler as I go. And this is straight too. See, this ruler sort of becomes an awl. I don't know if any of you are painters, but an awl is something you use to keep your paintbrush off of your painting, or like keep your hands off your painting. So you see how I've, like, at this end, this is holding it still. At this end, I'm holding it up off the ground. You see I can actually slide my pen under here. And so the ruler never touches the table. I'm just using this to create straight lines. And that's called an awl. A-W-L, for those who are the uninitiate among us. Dynamo says Mitch was doing this. Oh yeah, if you have a question or comment, please do at me. Please do at me. P Money says, can you tell us which character you are inking right now? This is Lone Star. That's Lone Star. This is Stalker. This is Pastor. I can never get my lines that thin. Brett, the quill is that thin. The quill is that thin. You just don't put pressure on it, right? The quill does the work. You just drop it down there. Like so, like so, like so. Gosh, I need to focus on where this camera is targeted. It's taking me too much time. All right. And let's see, what else can I discuss here? Line weight. Texture. I don't know if you guys have any questions that would help me to. I think I've got the basics down here. I'm just doing the lines. Oh yeah. Maybe that's sort of a basic thing that I should explain. A quill is designed essentially to go in this direction. So you're supposed to either go this direction or this direction or this direction, right? Never go up. You're going to dig right into your paper. You're going to bend the tip of your nib. Going sideways if you're going to go sideways, you've got to travel. You've got to tread lightly going sideways. Sometimes sideways can give you your thinnest line on your nib. Right? A very thin line going sideways. But it can also catch the paper because, the tip of the nib is designed like this, essentially. So the smoothest edge is going to always be dragging it away from the tip, right? So it's like if you're trying to go forward, oh my gosh, that's sketchy. And not bright. Don't go forward. That's a rule you don't break. You can go sideways. That is kind of bending the rules a little bit. But don't go forward. Not good. Not wise, my friend. Not wise. Who wins, Mike? Pastor versus priest. Well, you're going to have to discover that in Monster Hunt. Coming to you in October. Piwani says, since it's not in color yet, my question is it a bigger challenge to do a comic in black and white than color or vice versa? Well, I draw in black and white and I leave it up to the colorist to do the color. So for me, that's kind of a moot question. Joe Marone says, could you discuss how you balance style-wise? How dark to go? Like, how do you know when to spot blacks versus shading? When comic inking, finding a good balance. For me, whether or not I spot blacks tends to depend on what tool I am using. Because if I'm using a good brush, spotting blacks can be... spotting blacks is easy, right? But if I'm going to use a quill... and I don't want to, I don't have a good brush to kind of drop blacks in. I start enjoying filling everything in with cross hatching. I know it's weird. Well, it's a style choice, but it's a style choice I kind of get stuck with because right now I don't have a good brush, and this is why it's not a how to ink with a brush workshop. This is how to ink with a quill. And spotting blacks, if you want to do that, I don't know. What to leave blank versus using blacks for color. How do you decide when to leave blank versus using blacks for color? I don't know, man. Over my career, I have found that fewer colorists know how to really model and shade appropriately than don't. So I don't know if that's a weird way to say it. Most colorists don't know basic modeling. So I might spend all this time doing this really great core shadow, and then I get it back from the colorist, and they've colored the whole thing the same color, and they've completely ignored my core shadow, and they've gone ahead and created a different light source, and I'm like, why do I bother? I used to have fun doing core shadows on a bunch of stuff. But when you have colorists that are like incompetent, I'm not going to name any names or throw anybody under the bus, but boy, have I worked with some incompetent colorists. And what are you going to do? What are you going to do about that, guys? Change it so that you leave stuff open for colorists to make their own mistakes? I don't know. Maybe that's what happened to me. Maybe that's why I leave things open now. I just got jaded by the lack of decent colorists in the industry. Not that there aren't some great colors. There are some really good colors, but few and far between. What nibs do you use, and what nibs are industry standard? The industry standard is the Hunt 102. I am using the Zebra. This is a Zebra quill that I got in Japan last December. I believe they are available on Amazon. I believe they're a little pricey, but they are tempered. They're stiff, tempered, not a lot of give, but they break in quite nicely, actually. I was worried about using it because I didn't like how stiff it was at the beginning. It was giving me a razor thin line, but yeah, really stiff. But it's really kind of broken in now. It's got a nice soft edge to it. It's not giving me that crazy like scraping sound anymore. It didn't have any burrs on it. That's a problem with the 102s, is sometimes you'll get a 102 that has a burr on it and it'll just cut your paper to shreds, and then you're like, I don't know how to use this thing. And it's not you, it's the tool. And in those cases you have to train your nib. You have to get some 800 grit sandpaper or something to tear it down and reshape the tip, and which is, most people won't do it. They'll just chuck it and grab and get another one, and hopefully 2 out of 3 out of the box you bought won't suck, but good luck. Good luck indeed. Alright, what's the next question? Is there an inking book you recommend? Gary... There's one called Comic Book Inking by Gary Martin. I think it's called Comic Book Inking. That's a good inking, but I'm not sure if it's the only inking book on the market. But I would recommend it, yeah. Or you can just stay here and watch me. At some point, when I do reorder some good brushes, I will get back to that. The problem is I've already started Lone Star with this nearly all inking quill inking style, and I don't really want to shift back to going with the brush, because my kind of natural tendency is to use brush and quill in tandem. Do organic stuff with the brush, do inorganic stuff with the quill, do texturing with the quill, but yeah, when you don't have a good brush, you stick to what you got. That's good. Do you prefer inking your own comic drawings or getting someone else to do the inking? And how do you feel about inking other people's drawings? I actually enjoy inking other people's drawings if it's fun work. I really liked working on Malin's piece. I hate inking on people's work when I have to fix stuff. I don't mind adding, textures and whatnot. Like Malin's was all solid blacks, and so I just added a ton of textures into his stuff. But I don't want anyone else to ink me. I've only ever had one artist. Not that I haven't worked with other good inkers. Armando Duruthi, Walden Wong, some good guys, good inkers. But I've only ever had one guy whose use of brush and quill was similar to my own stylistic choices, and that was Rick Ketchum. And rest in peace, Rick passed away a few years ago, so no more Rick inking on my books. Yeah, he did most of the Black Tide stuff, so oddly, even though that book didn't do fantastically well, I think it's some of the best, partnership work that I've done. Rick did a fantastic job inking that. Actually, I think Rick might have inked some of my X-Man work too. Thanks for sharing. Didn't even think of the colorist experience as a skill and skill as a factor. Yeah, it is. It really is. Serious question this time from Albino. For a novice wanting to try working with a quill, what's a ballpark estimate for cost of quills, nibs, and paper to get them started? Quills are cheap. You can go get a quill and a holder. Not one of these holders. This is a special holder. You don't get these. I literally, the place that sells these holders, their website's gone. So I have 2 of them. I'm not selling either of them, but this is a 2mm burnisher holder with a chuck on it that holds the nib nice and tight. But you can get your standard, I'm trying to see if I have one in my, oops, sorry. Trying to see if I have one in my thing here. Well, here's a Japanese deleter holder. You can get these. I think these are $6 or $8, and you can hold multiple size nibs on here. The problem with this is that interior piece of plastic over time can weaken and snap off, and then you have to go buy another one. Stainless steel is a way to go for me. So, and then the nibs are like $2-3 each. Paper, you can get a $10 ream of Bristol to practice on, or maybe some vellum. And the ink, get yourself either. My preferred nib inking. There's a variety. The Koh-i-Noor 3080 series, ink for paper and film, has a great fluidity to it. It's got a great sheen to it. It can get a little thick if you are leaving it out. Like I leave my little jar here out and open probably too much because it starts to evaporate, right? And when it evaporates, it doesn't have to evaporate much for the ink to start thickening. And if the ink starts thickening, it stops flowing. And that's exactly the opposite of what you want. Now, the way I can solve that, what I don't like to do is to add water. I will on rare occasion. But if you add water, it lightens the ink, right? If you add a cheap, thin ink like Black Magic, or what's this one? Speedball Super Black. It's a really thin ink that I wouldn't recommend inking with. It'll do in a pinch, but that's a nod to RT Bear. But it makes for a great thinning agent because it's still ink. You're not lightening up your ink so much as you are just sort of, re-lubricating it, I guess is one way to say it. Kind of an odd way to say it, but still one way to say it. All right. Let's see. Welcome back. Thank you, Chuck. How long do these things last? The video or the nib? Andros is saying, what now? Rapidographs. That's what I started with, because I had no idea what Terry Austin inked with, and I was trying to get those lines. And so I was like, oh, yeah, rapidographs, I'll get those. And, so a lot of my, grade school or middle school and high school things were inked with rapidographs. But, wow, yeah, what a pain in the butt those were. Yeah, and to clean them, to keep them clean. Ugh. Oh, my stars and garters. I was so glad I discovered that you're supposed to ink with a quill. And then when I wanted to ink with the pen, I'm so glad that they created microns. And then when I discovered Copic multiliners, I was like, oh my gosh, these are so much better than microns. So it's nice to have choices. It's nice to have choices. Back when I started, not so many choices. But I still think it feels good to use the traditional tools of the trade of illustrators of years gone by. Terry Austin never used a Japanese well, not that I know of. I think he used the Hunt 102. No, I'm sure he did. The Hunt 102. But he probably would have liked the Zebra. What am I saying? He's not dead. He's still around. He's just... how long do nibs last? Oh! That... I've been using this Zebra probably for 3 or 4 pages, I think. It is losing its razor sharp tip, but I'm still getting a decent thin out of it, so I'm not ready to eject it yet, because it is. That's the funny thing is you get them broken in and they feel nice and good, and then after they're broken in they start wearing out, and then you're like, ah. So there's always this sweet spot when a nib is best. And then it just decides to quit, and you start getting these ugly thick lines, and you're like, all right. And then, I mean, that's why it's a good thing to have 2 nibs, 2 nib holders, is because you can have, if you're trying to do, razor thin lines, then you crack out your new one. But if you've got, like, you want to do some beefy lines or some texturing or something, you just grab the old one. It's already broken in. It's already kind of over thick, and yeah, it gives you that option. All right, next question. Is this a vellum overlay on someone's pencil work? No, this is my work, Chuck. This is my pencils. I do blue line. I draw in blue line. I just take my Graphic Gear 500. I put Pentel blue. Let's see. Nope, that's not it. I use Pentel blue, 5mm lead. My weapon of choice. Because that way I don't have to erase my inks. Kurohige says, I see you don't dip your nib to fill the ink reservoir hole. Is there a reason for that? I'm not looking where my nib is. In my jar, I can't see the level, and I don't like having too much ink on it anyways. But there, I filled it. Happy now? Yeah, I don't like wasting ink, and so I don't. And I'm cleaning my nib all the time, if you guys hadn't noticed, and so I don't want to waste like a full load. It's not that I'm cheap. I don't know. Maybe I am cheap. You got me addicted to metal prints. So cool, says D-Fresh. All right. Yeah, I just handed Oli off a bunch of 12x18s to sell at San Diego Comic-Con. I don't know if he will. He usually does pretty well with the John Gallagher stuff, but we'll see. Why do some artists use others to ink? Company directive, or do they prefer using another inker? Company, I mean, it's in the olden days, you know, you're on this cram jam schedule to get everything done. And so they broke it up into pencilers and inkers so they could, you know, speed up the process, get twice as much work done. However, there's also another problem, is that most pencilers don't have a clue how to ink. Inking is a skill in and of itself. It's not just drawing with a pen, right? There are techniques, skills that have to be learned if you want to be a competent inker. If you just want to draw with a pencil, that's fine too, but it's not quite the same thing. See, always cleaning my quill, always cleaning my quill. Alright. See, that's why I'm always turning the paper, because you cannot, or you should not, be inking forward with your quill. Hopefully I'm not teaching you guys any bad habits. Alright, any other questions? Do metal prints sell well? Yeah, they do. They sell really well. They sell very well. They are just one huge pain in the butt. Something about line weights, says Mark Trafford, but does not ask a question. Something about line weights. Can you phrase that as a question? I think I covered line weights on another video, but not everybody watches every video, so I could cover it again. Notice I slow down around the face because I want these lines to be very precise. D-Fresh says, I tend to over-render when I ink. Is that a good way to get out of the habit? What is a good way to get out of the habit? I don't know. Obviously, I don't have a way not to do. The only way I do that is by deliberately doing an open, like an open style, non-rendering. You know, you have to do it by choice. You're like I'm not going to add a ton of rendering to this image, so you have to think about that before you start dropping lines down. Also, finishing it in pencil first, so that you know what you're going to ink. That's probably helpful. That's probably why, dude. I don't wanna add too much ink in there, because then you get a buildup of ink on the inside of your well here that dries up, and on the back you can get this huge glop of ink drying up and just creating this big old ugly hump of dried ink. So that's why I think that's why I got out of the habit of doing a full dip, because I remember that used to happen all the time, but not now. Mawa. Inking, inking, yeah. Alright, I want to make sure this video doesn't get too boring. Got any more questions, guys? Neil Adams said 290 pen point, not 102. I just thought Adams used a brush. Has RT Bear ever inked you professionally? No, I don't think he has. I do not think he has. He did ink that She-Ra piece I did just for a lark. I think maybe he gave it away on a stream or something. She-Ra. Any idea what this 290 is? No. Why don't you go ahead and Google it for us? I'll be honest, I've never been a fan of Neil Adams's inks. I mean, it's his style. If he wants to do it, that's fine. I've never been a fan of John Byrne's inks either. Toothpaste? Did it have brushable hair? What are you talking about? Burning is bad. It may mess with the metal tempering and cause breakage. A lot of peeps in calligraphy are using toothpaste and a soft toothbrush. For what? What are you guys talking about? Over-rendering is what I do, says Joe Marone. It's why I started to adopt a Frank Miller Chiaroscuro style to compensate. Do I have a book on perspective that I could recommend? Dude, I don't. The book on perspective that I learned from was one of those art books, like the Walter Lance. Is it Walter Lance? Something Lance. Or something Walter. Those art books from Michaels. My mom had one. I started studying it in like 4th grade. So yeah, perspective was one of the early things that I learned. But I learned it just from one of those simple books from Michaels, or she probably got it at Aaron Brothers. But yeah, there's no necessary. I'm sure there's some great like manga perspective books. I don't know of any like comic book perspective books, because perspective is perspective. You know, there's fun ways to do it and there's boring ways to do it, but ultimately it's perspective is perspective. Actually, How to Draw Marvel Comics the Marvel Way has a bit on perspective too. Oh, talking about cleaning the oil that comes on the nibs. Oh, I've never cleaned the oil that comes on the nibs. Is that wrong of me? Should I have cleansed my oils? I'm supposed to take the kids to go see Spider-Man today. Kinda don't even care. Alright, it's a meme from Clownfish TV. Is Ethan the only guy who just draws in pen from the very beginning? How many people are like that and just skip the pencils? Ethan generally pencils. He just doesn't, he does very loose pencils, or what we would refer to as breakdowns. and then he goes to inks on that. And Matt Weldon does something similar. He doesn't. He just draws outlines of characters and then goes in and inks them. You know, hey, to each their own. Dan Fraga also does a straight. Actually, not also. Dan does a straight, no penciled, straight to inks sort of a style. But I don't think he does that for his published work. I think he just does that for, like, videos and stuff. Oof, I got something on my nib. Would you want to criticize amateur inks? You mean like portfolio review stuff? Yeah, I said I was going to do that, but then I don't know. I didn't get around to it. Honest portfolio reviews. Alright, now I start going in here and adding texture to stuff that's not even in the pencils. Sort of broken lines that makes it look like material stitching. I know, it's terribly exciting. Terribly, terribly exciting stuff. Kim Jung-gi, no pencils. That is correct. Although I'm trying to work it out so that Kim Jung-gi will do pencils for a piece for me, and then I will ink it. Because that is something that would be hella fun. Although I haven't talked to his manager in a while. Maybe I'll see him in San Diego. I was just thinking of Fraga. Portfolio examinations. How many people are actually watching this? 89 people. Any tips for better pressure control? That's a good question. How can you maintain good pressure control in nib? Gosh, I really don't know how to answer that. Interesting. I just kind of like let it go. As if I feel the nib is on the paper, I know, well, I don't know, but if the nib's on the paper, it should be delivering ink. So I guess just try to keep a light hand. I don't know how else to explain it. Kim Jung-gi is a maniac. Alright, let me I don't think I have to spend all day doing this. I think you guys have probably exhausted the questions. If not, I need to use a stencil there, so I will grab it, my 0.05 and one of my stencils. Zach mentioned you made a new Jawbreaker. Can you elaborate? Sorry, not about drawing. Oh, Mark, I didn't know Zach ever mentioned that. Yeah, her name is Seance, and she's a she kind of creates these these physical ghosts, like out of the dead. If someone has died in the vicinity, she can draw up that, not the spirit, right? She can't technically draw up the spirit because the spirit's not there, but she can draw up sort of an essence and create a automaton from that spiritual echo, so to speak. Yeah, I was gonna do a different character, but the one that I was using was too much like one Zach was already using. So he's like, can you do something else? So yeah, I was happy to be able to actually create another Jawbreaker. And I'm glad he's mentioned it. That's rad. When was that? When did he mention it? Maybe I should go check out that video. Monster Hunt, yeah, yeah. Are people asking him about Monster Hunt? The best quill to get. I don't know. These are pretty nice. These Japanese zebra quills. I'm not sure if it's the best in the world, but it's giving me a nice line. It's not snagging my paper. It's consistent. Like every one is identical. Whereas the Hunt 102, the quality control on that has diminished greatly from what I hear. I hear if you can find like an old stash of 102s from like the 60s or the 70s, they're like epic. So I don't know, go check out old like estate sales with artists or something. I don't know how you would find them. But yeah, the quality control at Hunt, they're cheaper. They just stamp those suckers out. Like I said, some of them will have burrs on them, so it's really irritating. But the Japanese ones, they don't have those. They are very consistent, so I might just say go with the Japanese. Go with the Japanese. And again, I can give you the full name here in a second. On the stream with Yellow Flash and Tug yesterday. Oh, right on. Alright, so once again, ladies and gentlemen, this one is the... I'm going to wrap this stream up, but I'm going to read this for you because I don't think you're going to be able to see it. So it is a T Ishikawa, ISHIKAWA, zebra number 2586. The non-tempered, and these are very nice. These are very much like a 102, but again, the quality control on them is immaculate. This is a Nikko pen, Nikko, mapping quill, 659. So it's a Nikko mapping quill. And again, looks very much like a 102, but is much, I mean, oh, like butter. Listen to that. No scrapage sound at all, and that's a brand new nib. Alright, so those are my quills of choice at the time. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up, and thank you all for being here. I hope you enjoyed watching how to draw comics like a pro quill inking workshop. I got one full figure completed, and now we'll go on to spend a good amount of my time doing the rest of it today. Thank you all for being here. Check out my other how to draw videos. They should be in a playlist called tutorials on the front of my page. Do subscribe if you have not already. Like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Share. Tell your friends. And go back, Lone Star, Soul of the Soldier. Thanks, guys.